In 1859, a bankrupt rice merchant walked into a San Francisco newspaper office. He handed the editor a single sheet of paper. On it, he declared himself Emperor of the United States of America. The editor printed it as a joke. The joke lasted 21 years. This is the story of Emperor Norton I and the city that decided to play along. Joshua Abraham Norton was born in England around 1818 and raised in South Africa. In 1849, he sailed into San Francisco during the gold rush. He did not come for gold. He came with $40,000 in inheritance. His plan was smarter than digging. Everyone digging for gold needed somewhere to sleep. So Norton bought land and buildings and sold supplies to the miners. Within a few years, he was worth about $250,000. That is roughly $10 million today. He was one of the richest men in the city. He was respected. He was invited places. He was, by every measure, a serious man. And then, in 1852, he had one very good idea. China had banned rice exports. San Francisco was full of hungry people and running out. The price of rice in the city shot up to 36 cents a pound. Then Norton heard that a ship from Peru was arriving, loaded with 200,000 pounds of rice. He bought the entire cargo, the whole shipload, every grain of it. If he owned all the rice, he could name any price he wanted. It was a perfect corner. Then a second ship from Peru sailed into the bay. Then a third. Peru, it turned out, had a lot of rice and had heard San Francisco was paying well for it. The price collapsed from 36 cents a pound to 3. Norton had paid top dollar for rice now worth almost nothing. He tried to void the contract, arguing the rice was poor quality. The case dragged through the courts for years. In 1857, he lost for good. His fortune was gone. His property was sold off. He filed for bankruptcy. And Joshua Norton simply vanished from San Francisco for about 2 years. Nobody is entirely sure where he went or what happened to him there. On the 17th of September, 1859, he walked back into the city. He went straight to the offices of the San Francisco Evening Bulletin, and he handed over a proclamation. It read, "At the peremptory request of a large majority of the citizens of these United States, I, Joshua Norton, declare and proclaim myself Emperor of these United States." Nobody had asked him. There was no large majority of citizens. He had simply decided. The bulletin printed it on the front page, because it was a slow news day and it was funny. And here is the part nobody expects. San Francisco just went with it. Officers at the Presidio Army base heard his uniform was getting shabby, so they gave him a real one. Blue, with gold epaulettes and brass buttons. He added a beaver hat with a peacock feather and carried a walking stick. Every day, the emperor walked his city on foot, inspecting it. He checked that the sidewalks were in good repair. He checked that the streetcars were running on time. He attended public meetings and lectured anyone who would listen about civic improvement. Restaurants let him eat free, and it was good for business. They put up brass plaques reading, "By appointment to His Imperial Majesty." Theaters kept 3 seats open for him on opening night. He rarely used more than one. And when the emperor ran short of money, he printed his own. Promissory notes, mostly 50 cents, signed by hand, promising interest he could never pay. Shops and bars accepted them. Some people kept them as souvenirs instead of cashing them. Today, an original Norton note sells at auction for thousands of dollars. Now, being emperor is not just parades. Norton took the job extremely seriously. He issued decrees, and the newspapers printed them, because readers loved them. In 1859, he formally abolished the United States Congress. Congress, in fairness, did not appear to notice. So he ordered the army to march on Washington and clear the Capitol. The army did not do this either. He dissolved the Republic entirely. Nothing happened. He abolished the Democratic and Republican parties on the grounds that they caused arguments. Honestly, that one has aged fairly well. In 1863, he added a second title, Protector of Mexico. He later dropped it, reportedly admitting that protecting Mexico was proving difficult. In 1867, a young police officer made a serious career mistake. He arrested the emperor, intending to have him committed for insanity. San Francisco lost its mind. The newspapers were furious. One wrote that Norton had shed no blood and robbed no one. The police chief released him immediately and issued a public apology. From that day on, every officer in San Francisco saluted the emperor on sight. Here is the part that stops being funny and starts being strange. In 1872, Norton issued a decree about the bay. He ordered a suspension bridge built from Oakland across the water to San Francisco. People thought this was the funniest thing he had ever said. The bay was far too wide. He also ordered a tunnel dug underneath it in case the bridge did not work out. The Bay Bridge opened in 1936, roughly along the route he described. The Transbay Tube, a tunnel under the bay, opened in 1974. The man everyone was humoring had described both of them a century early. Through all of it, Norton was genuinely poor. He lived in a small boarding house room and paid about 50 cents a night for it. On the 8th of January, 1880, he collapsed on California Street. He was on his way to a lecture. He died before a doctor could reach him. His room was searched. He owned a few coins, a walking stick, and a collection of walking sticks. There were fake telegrams from foreign royalty and worthless shares in a gold mine. The city's businessmen paid for a proper funeral, with a rosewood casket. Somewhere between 10 and 30,000 people came to see him off. The funeral procession ran for 2 miles. San Francisco's population was about 200,000. Roughly 1 in every 20 people in the city turned out for a man with no real power at all. A quick warning about the stories you will hear about him. Many are legend. He probably did not stop an anti-Chinese mob by reciting the Lord's Prayer. The famous stray dogs, Bummer and Lazarus, were not his, though the city loved all three. What is documented is stranger than the myths anyway. Mark Twain lived in San Francisco then, and is thought to have based Huckleberry Finn's king partly on Norton. Since then, campaigns have repeatedly tried to rename the Bay Bridge after him. So was Joshua Norton mad? Historians mostly think he had some kind of breakdown after the rice, but he was never violent, never a thief, and never asked for anything except to be taken seriously. The real story here might not be about the emperor at all. A whole city was handed a broke man with an impossible claim and decided to be kind about it. They fed him, saluted him, printed his decrees, and buried him like an emperor. His headstone reads, Norton I, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico, which is a fairly good result for a man who once bought too much rice.